Welcome to the Folk School on Willow Creek, featuring University Distinguished Professor Tom Easer, singing and telling stories from the Salon on Willow Creek.
Well, I thought I was ready. Here we go. I need a bed for the 9 boys, and my horses need hay. I've been riding that grub line on the Hotdish highway. It's a long time, you know, I've been waiting for the words that you never did say. But alas, all my fond hopes have vanished. They say you are going away. From this valley they say you are going. I shall miss your blue eyes and sweet smile, for you take with you all of the sunshine that has brightened my pathway a while. Oh, consider while ere you leave me, do not hasten to bid me adieu. Remember that Red River Valley and the half-breed who loved you so true. So remember the valley you're leaving. Oh, how lonely, how dreary it will be. Remember the heart you are breaking. Be true to your promise to me. As you go to your home by the ocean, may you never forget those sweet hours that we spent in the Red River Valley, and the love we exchanged in its bowers. So consider a while ere you leave me, do not hasten to bid me adieu. Just remember that Red River Valley and the half-breed loved you so true. It's a long time, you know, I've been waiting for the words that you never did say. Yes. Special shout out to Mary Jo Bremner in Montana on account of that song. She's the one who thought we ought to include it in the program tonight.
Well, and she mentioned how much she loves that song, too.
Well, there we are. I remember going to the cemetery in Winnipeg there on the East Bank so that MJ and the rest of us in the party could lay a bouquet of roses on the grave of Louis Riel. What you doing there?
You're getting some sound back on that. You don't have it turned down.
Oh, fix that. A little echo there, huh? There. Laying roses on the grave of Louis Riel. Now that song, I think about this, you know, as a teacher, and often you're skirting these lines, you know, what do you present, what terms do you use, and that sort of stuff. There's that word half-breed in the song, you know, that's in the original. And then some scholars have looked at this and said, you know, that's not really a song about the Métis of Manitoba, which it is, because would they have used that term? Well, that's because those critics don't understand the context of the ballad. it's a ballad not in the voice of the Métis. It's a soldier sweetheart song. We're talking about the Métis uprising of 1869 against the authority of the government of the new Confederation of Canada and the arrival of British troops to suppress the rebellion. And then what I mean by soldier sweetheart, it's a little bit of a male fantasy thing. It's in the voice of one of these soldiers who is out there fighting the Métis insurgency in Manitoba, and he's got a Métis sweetheart. Now, and again, then people may say, well, okay, no, that's kind of a in the language, of our academic colleagues today, that's a very colonialist viewpoint, isn't it? And such a relationship had to have been exploitive and all this sort of stuff. Well, then you don't know the literature of the fur trade very well, and the parity of relationships between Europeans and indigenous peoples in the Red River Valley at the time, and the rise of an entire Métis people as a distinct people in Red River Valley. And that's what the song's about. In getting research on it, how did it come to be identified with Texas? As John Lomax puts it in Cowboy Ballads in 1911. I can't answer that strictly. I don't think anybody can right now. I do know that it happened before Lomax found this stuff, because I find it turning up in Oklahoma, see, on that side of the southern Red River, well before Lomax puts it in Cowboy Ballads in 1911. Interestingly, I don't find a Texas case before that. Odd. All the American versions seem to stem from a version that came back with the British troops, crossed the line in the Northeast, got to New York, and was published as the Bright Hudson Valley in New York in 1896. But truly, it's a Manitoba, northern Red River Valley song. Well, that's our opener for tonight, Dr. K. We do have dog company here. Oh, and it's also an appropriate ballad to include here in order to hint to bring in this announcement: no Willow Creek Folk School next Friday. Dr. Kelly and I, pre-COVID, and do you use that term? We often do. Pre-COVID, we had an annual ritual. We'd go up and spend in midwinter, and sometimes it was deadly cold when we went up there. But nevertheless, we'd go up and spend a weekend in Winnipeg, just to decompress a little bit. And it's time for that, don't you think?
It might be a little bit too late,
Maybe
but let's do it anyway.
You've already imploded, have you? Well, we're heading out, and we'll be gone before Friday night. Checking into the Hotel Fort Garry, if you're familiar with the turf up there. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Indeed. We just got to take a few hours, maybe a couple of days for ourselves there.
But we'll be back the first Friday.
First Friday in February. Yeah. Anything you want to say from NDSU Press?
Well, I could do that, yes. I see Denise has popped on here. I hope that her presentation today went well in, I think she was in Rolla. Is that right?
I believe Rolla is right.
I think so.
Yeah.
Talking about her children's book.
Rolla, North Dakota, for those who aren't from this part of the plains.
Anyway, I'm sure it was a splendid presentation. And she's written a little bit in here about the Métis. So might check that out.
Indeed.
And then not a whole lot of activity to report. There's lots going on behind the scenes at the press, but we did have an interesting meeting today with interested partners, perhaps, in publishing a 3-volume book about Lawrence Welk. Everything you'd want to know. So we're kind of excited to get that in production.
Wow.
But we are working on some funding for that because it's going to be a bigger deal than most of our single volume books.
The biggest project you've ever tackled at the press.
It will be, yes. And I've never done a boxed set of books before, but we're going to press one more thing to cross off my list.
moving on to ballad number 2. Now and then I get out the old collections by Lomax and Pound and Rickaby and the rest of them. I look at things that they discovered a century or more ago, and I think, yeah, there's missing information. This is a piece of something larger, and that was the case here. About a week ago. Right after the last folk school, I got out my copy of Lomax's Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads, 1911, and I turned to a ballad in there called The Bullwhacker. I'm a lonely bullwhacker on the red cloud line. What the hell is the red cloud line? There isn't any red cloud line in the day of bullwhackers on the plains. That's something garbled that he picked up there. Began to research this, and it led me through various winding paths. For one thing, the song is a specimen from a whole family of ballads that hinge on the phrase, kind of a coarse phrase, root, hog, or die. But it's a great 19th century phrase. Abraham Lincoln used it. But it predates for him. For many years, people said, well, the first use of this was in Davy Crockett's autobiography. Actually, it shows up earlier than that, and the more text that keeps showing up. So in the very early 1800s, Americans were using this phrase, root, hog, or die, to enjoin someone to, well, you're on your own now. You're going to have to shift for yourself, get to work. So it's a phrase, it's a proverb of self-sufficiency. Very popular in 19th century America, and then it makes its way, it becomes like a complex of ballads, with that commonly as the punchline. I've got a specimen from 1856 that what became an early music hall song, and there's sheet music on it. And I get this from the Library of Congress, but it's not one of the folk versions of this variety of ballads, because you look at it, the intervals are too difficult, and they are random. It's cheap commercial product, and no folk singer would sing that. But as I search around, I find many songs in this complex. In a future, Willow Creek Folk School will be bringing in a Buffalo Hunters ballad from Ellsworth, Kansas in 1874. Now have 4 Buffalo Hunter ballads, Dr. K. Whereas I used to think, well, there's only one, the Buffalo Skinners. But now there are 4 solid ones, including that 37 stanza one of the Buffalo Hunters War of 1877 in West Texas. But this one, the one I'm bringing in tonight, it's great variations out of Oklahoma on that too, but a future time for that. Here's what seems to be kind of a linchpin in the Western literature of the variety of ballads, root, hog, or die. And it comes to its virtue by the writings of a man named John Hanson Beadle. I know, dorky name. Great 19th century name. John Hanson Beadle, who was a Civil War veteran from Indiana, who came west and traveled to the Utah Territory, sometime after the Mormon War, as it's called. And that's the dispute that the Saints had with the federal government over essentially political jurisdiction of the Valley of the Great Salt Lake, after they had settled out there. And it was the extension of federal authority out there. Not really a war, but a bit of a military confrontation. Hanson went out, fell in with freighting interests, bullwhackers, and then settled in Salt Lake as the only Gentile newspaper editor in the community of saints there. There is the story that he got beat up by some over-enthusiastic saints who didn't like his editorials critical of Mormon authority. Well, that's a true story. How severe it was, that's open to speculation. Subsequently, he wrote a book called Life in Utah, or Mysteries and Crimes of Mormonism. This is no critique of Mormonism here. This is historical documentation here I'm working from here. Being an expose of the secret rites and ceremonies of the Latter-day Saints with a full and authentic history of polygamy in the Mormon sect from its origin to the present time. This is published, it looks like in 1870, and in it he embeds a bullwhacker ballad, that is, an ox team freighter's ballad from crossing the plains to Utah. I'm about to lay it on you. This is one of a complex of Teamsters ballads, however, of which I only had fragments before. But this one, with some targeting searching, I find a full text here, courtesy of Mr. Beadle. And he entitles it The Bullwhacker's Epic. You ready, Dr. K? Let's see. Oh, the tune. Beadle says, oh, the guys sang this to any tune they liked. They all just kind of made up their own. I'm pretty sure, judging by the meter of it, it's sung to the tune of Son of a Gambolier, which also is a standard tune for Root Hog or Die ballads. So I'm using that. Oh, I'm a jolly driver on the Salt Lake City line. I can lick the rascal that yokes an ox of mine. You'd better turn him out, or you bet your life I'll try to sprawl him with an oxbow, rude hog or die. Oh, I can tell you how it is when you first get on the road. You've got an awkward team and a very heavy load. You've got to whip and holler if you swear it's on the sly. Punch your teams along, boys, rude hog or die. Oh, it's every day at noon, there's something to do. If there's nothing else, there will be an ox to shoe. First with ropes you throw him, there you make him lie, while you tack on the shoes, boy, rude hog or die. I like that stanza, the image of roping that ox and throwing it and shoeing it while it lies on its side. That's good documentary. Perhaps you'd like to know what it is we have to eat. A little bit of bread and a dirty old piece of meat. A little old molasses and some sugar on the sly. Potatoes if you got 'em, rude hog or die. There's many strange sights to be seen along the road. The antelopes and the deer and the great big sandy toad. The buffalo and the elk and the rabbits jump so high. And with all the bloody Indians, rude hog or die. The prairie dogs in Dogtown and the prickly pears and the buffalo bones that are scattered everywhere. Now and then dead oxen from the vile alkali are very thick in places where it's rude hog or die. Oh, you've got to take things on the plains as you can. They'll never try to please you or any other man. You go it late and early and also wet or dry, and eat when you can get it, rude hog or die. Good times on Bitter Creek, they never can be beat. Rude hog or die is on every wagon sheet. The sand within your throat, the dust within your eye. Bend your back and stand it, rude hog or die. We arrived in Salt Lake on the 25th of June. The people were surprised to see us come so soon. But we are bold bullwhackers on whom you can rely. We're tough and we can stand it, so rude hog or die. And that's it. The Bullwhackers Epic. Got a lot of friends with us this week, don't we, Dr. K?
We do. And weather seems to be on the mind of folks.
Really?
Nancy Kelly in Kansas reporting coldest winter in 3 decades, while Alan reports from Washington, D.C. that the snow and cold there is just right. And then, of course, Rick Meidel with 71 plus degrees.
We don't want to hear from Rick along those lines. Come on.
Eric Lonchi sends you a ho. Hello there.
Well, the old wagon burner himself listening to the Ox Team, the Bullwhacker Ballad, right? Yeah, he's probably got his own thoughts on that.
Yeah, he probably does, and maybe he's written them down. He's got a book out.
I know he's got a big manuscript. Yeah. I'd like to read it.
Yeah, so would I.
And might even believe some of it. Some might even believe some of it. Yeah, I bet. Well, there's a song I've been meaning to bring in, but I had to think it through a little bit. Oh, yeah. Any more interesting exchanges going on there? Everybody getting along?
They seem to be getting along all right. Jess is at her mom and dad's house this time, watching the show.
Well, I hope she's got them all in. I wonder if Blake's got the folks at the senior home tuned in. No, I think they're doing that.
Oh, he was talking about doing that.
Yeah, this is the running joke that I found my audience here. One of my PhD students is keeping body and soul together while he's writing his dissertation, as essentially the cultural and recreational director at an old folks home over in Minnesota, and somehow. Oh yeah, they had weather and people couldn't get in and out, and so their programs weren't showing up. And so he was showing them the Willow Creek Folk School. He declares it was quite a hit with that particular set of folks. Now the money's coming.
That just means we reach a broad range. Of age and interest.
You bet. Well, do you remember this old ballad, the baggage coach ahead, Dr. K?
I do.
Well, that's what's teed up here next. So I got intrigued by this, and got a story written down about it, and we're going to tag team the story, which we often do in presentation situations. It's kind of the question is this a folk ballad or not? And so who do I turn to on this? I think Louise Pound should be the authority. She's kind of to me, the patron saint of balladry on the Great Plains, Louise Pound of Nebraska. And this is kind of written up, the background of it. So we're going to tag team the narrative of the story of this ballad, and then I'm going to jump right in and sing it. What do you say?
That sounds like a great idea.
I think you're supposed to start out.
All right, I will. During the 1890s, the so-called gay 90s, 2 developments transformed popular culture and folklore across the country, including the Great Plains. The first of these was the proliferation of urban music halls, entertainment venues that were masculine, sometimes a little bawdy, and surprisingly to us today, exceedingly sentimental. The other development was Thomas Edison's cylinder recording technology, which projected the melodies of the music halls to all corners and set people to singing along. Tin Pan Alley became a palpable thing, not only on West 28th Street of New York City, but even in places like Benkelman, Nebraska, or Kingfisher, Oklahoma. When in those days, songcatchers like John Lomax, Louise Pound, or Franz Rickaby set out to collect the lore of prairie folk, their informants sang them the songs they knew. Some of them were venerable folk songs that went back to England or Scotland in the 1600s. Many, however, were tearjerkers that can be traced to Tin Pan Alley. The Letter Edged in Black, The Fatal Wedding, My Mother Was a Lady, After the Ball, and so on. Were these folk songs too? Yes, because people were singing them from memory, passing them along, and in the process, transforming the texts and melodies.
Now, the songcatchers of those days had no ways of readily tracing the origins of a text as we might today. So they put the evolving music hall songs, as they found them, into their published anthologies as folklore. This was the right decision, albeit one made innocent of the song's lineage. In her 1915 syllabus of Nebraska folk song, Louise Pound included "The Baggage Coach Ahead," with the following précis: "A child cries in the arms of its father as they travel in a passenger coach at night. When the passengers remonstrate and ask where the mother is, he replies, 'She's dead in the coach ahead,'" which introduces us to perhaps the greatest tearjerker of all these songs, germinated from pavement but rooted in soil, "The Baggage Coach Ahead," composed by Gussie Davis, the African-American songwriter who learned composition working as the janitor in a music school in his hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. There you go, Joe Gardwin. We got Ohio in there. Davis says the plot line of "The Baggage Coach Ahead" came from a true story told him by a railroad porter.
Davis's plotline is evocative of his times as to demographic and gender realities. These were days, of course, when the death of a woman in childbirth was exceedingly common. Female train passengers in the narrative quickly take charge and soothe the infant, while the songwriter Davis takes charge of the story. He produces a masterly piece of popular music. As you listen to the chorus, you can feel the train rocking on the tracks. A historian of railroad ballads, Norm Cohen, in his discussion of "The Baggage Coach Ahead," raises doubts, which had been presaged by Pound, as to the originality of the ballad's narrative line. Previous scholars had surmised that Davis, having once worked as a railway porter, wrote from personal knowledge. Perhaps, but Cohen identifies several previous poems, stories, or songs on which Davis appears to have drawn. Immediately on issuance of Davis's sentimental ballad, however, across the country, including in Pound's home state of Nebraska, retailers recognized a hot item and advertised it widely. At the grassroots, prairie folk incorporated the song into popular entertainments and social functions. For decades thereafter, the phrase "baggage coach ahead" was a stock phrase for news writers who delighted in reporting stories of young widowers bravely nurturing their infant children. Edison Labs in 1911 released a silent film adaptation of the ballad. Observing in advertisements, this film portrays the story of the well-known ballad, which enjoyed great popularity some years ago.
In a sad example of human duplicity, as the Ward County Independent of Minot, North Dakota reported in 1904, Dodgers developed what police came to recognize as the "baggage coach ahead" scam. A thief would circulate among railroad passengers telling the sob story that he needed money to pay freight so that he'd be allowed to take his wife's coffin off the train at a stop ahead. And people fell for it again and again. A few years later, 1910, hundreds of passengers got stuck in Minot when the flooding Mouse River stopped trains there. And a stringer filed a story of a young male traveler on his way from Chinook, Montana to St. Paul, Minnesota, with an infant on his arm and with his wife in the baggage coach ahead. You know the reporter had a good laugh when he put that one over on the wire services.
Years later, Louise Pound, having included the Tin Pan Alley product, "The Baggage Coach Ahead," as folk song in two of her published anthologies, and mindful of her role as a scholarly arbiter of all things folkloristic, muses in her collection of essays, "Nebraska Folklore." How our songs, old and new, floated. Special impetus to their circulation in this country has been given not only by itinerant singers and printed sheets and songsters, but by vaudeville, which in its heyday in the later 19th century and succeeding decades was a great medium of song exploitation and survival. The mature scholar recognizes the vanity exhibited by excessive purity in the definition of balladry. The baggage coach ahead is entwined in the folk history of the prairies.
On a dark, stormy night, as the train rattled on, all the passengers had gone to bed, except one young man with a babe in his arms, who sat with a bowed down head. The innocent one began crying just then, although its poor heart would break. One angry man said, "Make that child stop its noise, for it's keeping us all awake." "Put it out," said another, "don't keep it in here. We've paid for our berths and want rest." But never a word said the man with the child, and he fondled it close to his breast. "Oh, where is its mother? Go take it to her." This lady softly said. "I wish that I could," was the man's sad reply, "but she's dead in the coach ahead." While the train rolled onward, the husband sat in tears, thinking of the happiness of just a few short years. Baby's face brings pictures of cherished hope that's dead. But baby's cries can't waken her in the baggage coach ahead. Every eye filled with tears when the story he told of a wife who was faithful and true. He told how he'd saved all his earnings for years just to build up a home for two. How in heaven it sent them this sweet little babe. Their young happy lives were blessed. His heart seemed to break when he mentioned her name, and in tears tried to tell them the rest. Every woman arose to assist with the child. There were mothers and wives on that train, and soon was the little one sleeping in peace, with no thought of sorrow or pain. Next morning at the station, he bade all goodbye. "God bless you," he softly said. Each one had a story to tell in the home of the baggage coach ahead. While the train rolled onward, the husband sat in tears, thinking of the happiness of just a few short years. Baby's face brings pictures of the cherished hope that's dead, but baby's cries can't waken her in the baggage coach ahead. I think once more with that chorus, and this time see if you can feel that railroad coach rocking. While the train rolled onward, a husband sat in tears, thinking of the happiness of just a few short years. that is the popular music genius of Gussie Davis. Rampant on the Prairies as folk song. I've got calendar ballad. And what makes it a calendar ballad? Why is this song suited for midwinter? It's a song called Old Dogs.
Yep, that's right, Willie.
Because this is the time when, with a warm fire and something drops from the table, crumbs dropping from the table, and all they all assume, these things assume pivotal importance in canine life. And so you don't have the great outdoors to blow off steam. Apologies to Jimmy Rogers for stealing his tune, but that's the way with folk songs. It's petty and grand larceny every day in folk singing. Old Dogs. Got to thinking about that particularly here during the past week. It's been venison week here, bringing home a couple of deer from the farm in Kansas, and every morning I got up. Every morning I get up and break down a side of venison. And the first time I wasn't done, and Dr. Kelly came down, and it was all over the kitchen, and that was not good. And then thereafter, I got better at it. And so by the time she came down, everything was cleared, and the kitchen is all cleaned up and disinfected, and all is right. And we have protein for the coming year and more, perhaps there. But excellent stuff. And you know who's observing every single motion? Dad, I smell deer meat, and here they come. And we spent a lot of hours today together this week, haven't we, Willie? Yeah, maybe even shared a morsel or two. So this is Old Dogs, calendar ballad for the week. All dogs go to heaven, so people say. But old dogs suit me to a T. They know all your secrets, but they love you still. So the old dogs are the best for me. The old dogs are always the best you see. New dogs you can find every day, but they can't take their places or ever be like the old dogs of yesterday. The old dog has done everything at least once. She's wise to the world and its ways. The young dog chases after every rabbit or deer, but the old dog, she sits and stays. The old dog doesn't stir when the coyotes howl. She listens to the concert instead. She stays by the fireside with the family, square meals and a comfy bed. Because the old dogs are always the best you see. New dogs you can find every day, but they can't take their places or ever be like the old dogs of yesterday. Now the old dog is a hunter, but a wily one. She's scenting the breeze, for she knows there's no use in racing or chasing around. She's learned to rely on her nose. Now I sit by the fire on a winter's night, with the old dog and an icy drink. I wonder what the old dog can see ahead, but I bet she knows more than we think. Now the old dogs are always the best to see. New dogs you can find every day, but they can't take their places or ever be like the old dogs of yesterday. Where the deer and the antelope play. So remember the valley you're leaving. Oh, how lonely, how dreary it will be. Yes, remember the Red River Valley and be true to your promise to me. On a dark, stormy night, as the train rattled on, all the passengers had gone to bed, except for one man with a babe in his arms and his wife in the baggage coach ahead. Now I'll tell it how it is when you get on the road. You got an awkward team and a heavy, heavy load. You've got to whip and holler and swear on the slide. Push your team along, boys, 'cause it's root, hog, or die. Remember the Red River Valley and be true to your promise to me. Where the skies are not cloudy all day, be true to your promise to me. Will you, Dr. Kelly?
Indeed. We now conclude today's edition of the Folk School on Willow Creek. We invite you to join us again the first Friday in February at 8 p.m. Central Time for more songs and stories.